Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very, very good reputation for themselves. And if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of IPAs. We've had Imperial Red IPAs from them, hazy IPAs, some sour IPAs, triple IPAs. Yeah, very good within the IPA style umbrella, if we can call it that. But one of the last beers I tried from this brewery was an Imperial Stout, and I was also very impressed with that. So I do hope we see more different styles from this brewery going forward, because they're obviously very capable. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from this brewery before. It's one that I know they can do very well, but it is a little bit different compared to the other beers I've had within this style category from them previously. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit north of me here in Osaka up towards Tokyo. We're going to go out to the west of the city a little bit to a place called Okutama, and that is still in Tokyo Prefecture. But that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Vertere. So this particular beer is called Acca. It comes in at 6.5% ABV. This one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, but it's hopped with New Zealand hops. So I guess it's an NZNE IPA, if we can call it that, a New England hazy IPA. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. If memory serves me correctly, this is the first time I've had a New Zealand hopped beer from these guys. I think most of the ones I've had have been American hops actually, but yeah, this is definitely the first one that has been called a New Zealand IPA by Vertere that I've reviewed, certainly. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up from the wonderful liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Emaichi here in Osaka, one of my go-tos when I come over here. A lovely little beer shop run by Koji, but mainly by his daughter Rika these days. And yeah, it started in Koji's family's old soy sauce factory, and he turned it into a beer shop, and it's a bit of a staple if you come to Osaka and you're interested in craft beer these days. So I'll put the link to their Facebook page in the video description below. Do make sure you go and check these guys out. They've always got some really interesting Japanese beers as well as things from further afield. But yeah, let's get on with this one then and see what the beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vertere before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because I do come over here to Japan quite a lot, and we're getting a fair few Japanese beers in Hong Kong these days as well. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Vertere once again then. So Vertere, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Okutama, which is in the western part of Tokyo Prefecture. You'll find the little village about 1.5 hours or 1.5 hours away from central Tokyo by train. But the two men behind the company are Hikaru Suzuki and Kage Sujinogi, who is the brewer. So apparently the two had dreamed of starting a company together since they were in high school, but Kage worked in a brew pub called Koenji, and he spent 3 years learning to brew there, and was also perfecting his own recipes at the same time. But the company started in a 70-year-old traditional house about 30 seconds from the front of Okutama Station, and apparently it took them over 6 months to renovate the house to get it ready to host the restaurant and brewery. So they started off with 3 taps taps in 2015, but they soon upgraded the system to 10, and all of these are of course now their own beers. But the brewing takes place in a small hut of about 7.5 square meters behind the restaurant and bar counter, and at the moment they've got 2 brew kits. They've got one 500 litre brew kit and one 1000 litre brew kit, and they've been gradually expanding their fermentation capacity over the years. But in 2018 they started cultivating their own hops in a field about 20 minutes drive away from the house, and they've been working to build up the hop harvest every year, and from what I gather it is actually starting to be pretty successful. So they started canning their beers in 2019, and they released the first cans in September of that year, and over the last few years after the COVID pandemic was over, they really started to focus on getting their beers out there a little bit more and spreading their sales across Japan, and they have started exporting some of their beers as well. We're getting a few of these in Hong Kong, of course, which is definitely nice to see. It is really cool to see that Japanese beer is starting to get out there a little bit more and is being recognised. I'm very happy about that. But yeah, as I said, over the years they've built up a very good reputation for themselves in terms of IPAs, but like I say, when I've tried other styles from them, they've always been very good too. So definitely one of the Japanese breweries that I would say is very much up and coming, and I do hope that I can get up to Tokyo at some point and go out to Okutama and actually visit this brewery's pub. That would be really awesome to do. So yeah, I think that's everything we can really say about Vertere for the moment. As of October 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 125 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. So yeah, let's leave it at that. If you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is your standard half-litre can, 500 millilitres, which quite a few breweries in Japan are using these days, although a number are still using like the 370 millilitre cans. You can see plain silver top on the top of the can there too, and a number of the beers you'll find from Vertere are named after different plants and insects and animals and stuff like this. So this one, of course, the Acca name, or I don't know if you would say Asa with this one, it's named after a type of flower, which you can see on the label artwork here, which I think is pretty cool. And it kind of makes sense with Japanese culture. For those of you who don't know, the Shinto religion in Japan, a lot of its kind of basis is like being respectful of nature, and that you know, respect natural beauty and stuff like this. So you find a lot of Shinto shrines in places of great natural beauty in Japan. So it kind of makes sense actually, what these guys are doing with naming a lot of their beers after different species of plants and stuff like this. I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, like I said earlier, this one comes in at 6.5% ABV. It's a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, but it's New Zealand hop, so we can also say it's a New Zealand hazy IPA as well. But to tell you the technical aspects of this beer, this one is hopped with Riwaka and Vertere. Riwaka has about 8% alpha acid, and it's going to give you quite a big grapefruity character from what I remember. Vertere is very high in alpha acid. It's like 18 or 19% alpha acid, and it gives you quite a lot of passion fruit and grapefruit, and it's also known for being like quite spicy and floral as well from what I remember. I've not had Vertere in quite some time, but the malt base in this one is 2-row Pilsner, flaked oats and Carapils malts, and it's fermented with an English ale yeast, and I do wonder if that means that it's using a Verdant New England IPA yeast. I'd be very curious about that. But yeah, that's the technical aspects of the beer. Let's get this guy out into the glass then and see how we go. I'm very, very curious about this one. If memory serves me correctly, this beer was 1,400 Japanese yen, so that's somewhere in the region of like £7 sterling for this can, maybe about €7.50, $8 American, something like that. Yeah, I mean, for people working and living in Japan, that is a little bit pricey, I guess. But the thing with Japan is that, you know, a lot of the ingredients they have to import from Australia or Europe or America, things like this. And then beer is taxed more heavily than Japanese sake is, you know, the malt tax, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, craft beer is a bit more expensive in Japan, especially relative to wages. That is just something you have to kind of bear in mind, of course. But yeah, this beer, I have to say, looks very, very nice. We've maybe got about 80% of it out into the glass. Yeah, I think about 80% is fair. But you can see it's poured with a lovely 3/4 finger frothy cream coloured head, I would say. If you go to the base, this one, if it'll focus, don't know why it's not focusing, must be the light in the background there. But yeah, you can see there's, or maybe you didn't, there's kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, and it's getting a little bit more foamy the further up that you go. But colour-wise, this one's actually a little bit more, it's a bit more like a kind of mixed tropical fruit juice, in all honesty. And I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, and that can, well, you don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, in all honesty. I think the fact that this one's got a slightly darker colour is most likely dependent on the Carapils malts that are in here. That's the one that's going to make this a little bit darker, in all honesty, I would say. The other thing is, the level of haze in this beer for a 6.5%er is pretty damn impressive. That's a pretty opaque beer, actually. So yeah, the level of haze in these things depends on oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. But yeah, that's one of the soupiest and gloopiest 6.5%ers I've seen for a while, actually. That's quite impressive. Not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, but it does look pretty damn nice, actually. So yeah, interesting stuff, I have to say that about this one. It certainly looks very, very nice, but nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is in terms of its appearance. Yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma then and just see how we go. I think this is going to be quite interesting. Oh, that smells really nice. It does. So, first impression is really soft, bready, juicy New England IPA. That's quite different to the other hazies that I've had from Vertere in the past, but I think it's been a while since I've had a kind of straight up New England hazy from these guys, in all honesty. But the aroma of this one is very, very nice, actually. So as I've often said on the channel, for me there are kind of 6 ways that a New England IPA can lean in terms of its malty and yeasty character. You've got your kind of farmhousey yeasty type character, you've got the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those 2 elements are a little bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs, but as the style has moved across the world and evolved, the focus is more on the kind of wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. For me, this beer really has a balance between the between the kind of oats, I would say. It's got really soft, smooth oats in it, and also the barley malt bread. I can't remember, was there wheat in this one? Actually, let me just check that. Did it have wheat in it? No, it didn't, actually. Interesting. So yeah, it kind of makes sense, because this one, if you had wheat in this, it would most likely be American wheat, because the aroma's very smooth. That would have been my guess there. But yeah, the oats in this one are very interesting too, because they're just that little bit drier. So yeah, your malt base is more about the white bready character, and the oats, of course. You've got a lovely kind of bright green component to this one, and you've also got a really nice juicy fruity character. I actually would have expected a more kind of pungent citrusy note in the aroma there, but it's more soft and kind of tropical, actually, because yeah, both Riwaka and Vertere are going to give you quite a bit of grapefruit. But let's do as we always do then, and just break the aroma down a wee bit and describe it more in depth for you before we taste the beer. So this smells really, really nice. It's almost got a little touch of like flour, if you think about like fresh bread, just the flour from your chopping board, your breadboard. Almost, the aroma of this one almost reminds me of that a little bit. But yeah, the backbone of this beer is great. You've got that lovely, fresh, baguette, white bready bread crust in there. So that's great. You've got a little bit of woody character yeah, you've got that little bit of kind of woodiness to it, and a wee bit of yeah, kind of, there is a little bit of woodiness to this one, especially the more that you smell of it. But then yeah, you've got that nice kind of Jacob's cream crackery type note in there as well. There's maybe a tiny little hint of like a toasty and slightly sweet brown bready, like wholemeal brown bready character in there. Yeah, so white bready bread crust for sure, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, and then yeah, above that you get this slightly sweet wholemeal brown bready character. Above that, of course, you start to get the white bready notes coming out of the beer. And the white bread is almost, it's slightly drier, but it also has this little bit of kind of dry sweetness to it. It's almost like it's a little bit kind of bread and buttery in a sense. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. So on top of the oaty, or on top of the bready side of things with this one, you start to get the oats out of this. And the oats are quite interesting because I know this beer is pretty fresh. Of course, you know, they always are at Liquor Shop Asahia. This one is pretty fresh, but the oats are coming across as being a little bit drier in this one. As I've often said, when it comes to New England hazy IPAs, the oaty character can often be an indicator of how fresh your beer is. Essentially, the creamier the oats are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. But this is interesting because the oats have a nice kind of smoothness to them, but they're also showing you a little bit of a drier character, and it's maybe because they're kind of flaked oats. So yeah, that's something that I'm quite curious about with this one, I have to say. And the way that that goes together is really quite nice. So a little bit of dry oaty character in there, but it's giving you a wee bit of sweetness. There is a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of note, and a wee bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit out of this one with the Carapils malt in there. That's to kind of be expected. But the flaked oats really are giving you quite a nice little bit of dryness too. So aroma wise, the malty side of this beer is really nice. The yeasty side of the beer, at the back of the nose, it has more of a it has more of a kind of like farmhousey, crackery, bready character, like a kind of rustic white bread. Actually, that's really what I'm getting out of the yeasty side of this beer. And again, that goes together really quite nicely. This is definitely one of the slightly more dry New England IPAs I think that I've come across in recent times, actually, in terms of its malt base, but it's still got that little bit of sweetness to it, so that's quite quirky in all honesty. But yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's go on and have a little look at the hoppiness. So as I've said in many IPA reviews on the channel before, there are three types of hoppings to think about when you're brewing an IPA. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you pretty much all your bitterness and a kind of deep dank green component. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and again, it gives you a very kind of bright green component. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, whereas West Coast IPAs use all three. So that's why your West Coast IPA is usually quite dank and quite bitter, and while the hazy IPAs are kind of quite soft and quite juicy, of course. And it's quite obvious this one is using late addition and dry hopping for the most part. So let's look at the green component then and the fruity side of things, just to round off our take on the aroma here with this one. So yeah, the green component of this beer, pardon me, is actually very, very soft. And I have to say, I quite like that about this one. So for me, the green component in this one, there's a little tiny touch of earthiness in there, not overly much, a little bit of woodiness as well, but for the most part your green component is leaning toward the floral side of things, and there's quite a little bit of kind of grassy zestiness in there. Riwaka, from what I remember, a lot of New Zealand brewers call it like the New Zealand answer to Sats, because it does have that little bit of, like, you know, floral spice and kind of nobly earthiness and things like that to it. So yeah, you can definitely get a little bit of an almost noble hoppy character in the green component here. But yeah, I like that about this beer for sure. Let's have a wee look at the let's have a wee look at the fruity side of things in this beer. So yeah, for me, it's very soft and very kind of tropical, in honesty. There's a little bit of a kind of soft, like juicy melon in this one. I'm getting a wee bit of that. Lots of kind of passion fruit, which is going to be your Vertere that gives you that. But it's got wee bits of like apricot and maybe a little bit of pineapple and stuff like that in there as well. Almost a little touch of gooseberry too, which I find quite interesting. But yeah, very soft and very oily and juicy kind of character coming out of this one. In a way, the fruitiness, the more that you smell of it, it is very oily, and that's one of the characteristics of New Zealand hops. A brewery back home in Scotland, Tempest, they love New Zealand hops, and this beer is showing that kind of same oiliness that a lot of their beers do. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is just really, really damn good actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. Really, really happy with this one aroma wise. I think it smells great. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we taste this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Acca, a 6.5% New Zealand hopped, New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Vertere in Okutama, Tokyo Prefecture here in Japan. I think this is going to be really, really good. Slanja, skål, cheers, kampai. Ooh, that's nice. Really soft, really juicy. New England IPA, but it does give you just that little touch of bitterness into the aftertaste. You can taste the kind of piney resiny notes of the Vertere and the Riwaka in there afterwards. Another really solid creation from Vertere, of course. Like I said to you, these guys are good, so definitely one of the Japanese breweries that you need to check out if you get the chance. Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, so where do we start with this one? Yeah, first impression. I would, if I was tasting this blind without knowing about the malt base and things, I actually would have guessed it was a more wheaty leaning New England IPA. It does have a wee bit of dryness and a wee bit of bite to it, but that's potentially the carapils in this one. But yeah, it's quite a barley malt leaning New England IPA. It has got that wee bit of kind of spicy bitterness to it as well. And then yeah, you've got some nice fruity notes in there. I think the Riwaka is really showing its grapefruity and kind of piney resinous qualities in this beer, which is really interesting. So yeah, slightly different, this one, compared to what I thought it was going to be. This beer is one where the aroma and the flavour that you get actually diverges a little bit, so that's quite interesting. So yeah, for me then, let's go to the middle third of the palate and start off as we always do. The backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust in the base there. As you move further forward, you get that wee bit of like woody character coming out of the beer, and then there's a wee smattering of kind of Jacob's cream cracker above that. But yeah, above the Jacob's cream cracker, you can feel a more dense layer. You've got that wholemeal, brown bready kind of character in there, which does have a slight degree of sweetness to it, and it gets more grainy into the aftertaste. But yeah, above that you have a kind of taller, lighter and more airy white bready character, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, yeah, the white bready character that comes out of this, it does feel a little bit more grainy, and it's also it does also have a little bit of sweetness to it, so it's a bit grainy and it's a bit sweet, which is kind of unusual because you don't normally put those things together. But yeah, let's see, I do quite like how that pieces together in this particular beer. But yeah, above the kind of white bready layer, you start to get the Pilsner malt, and I would say the Pilsner malt actually has quite a wee bit of kind of dryness and stuff to it, which is interesting too. So yeah, as I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So with this beer, you actually get quite a little bit of, I'd say there's quite a little bit of dryness, like Pilsner malty dryness at the back of that middle third of your palate. But then yeah, as you move further forward, there's a really nice little bit of kind of smoothness and dryness out of the Pilsner malt too. So yeah, you've got that little bit of Pilsner malt bite in there from the carapils in this one. Yeah, that's interesting for sure. So, in the dead centre of your palate, you get that little bit of circle, that little kind of more oily circle there, and that's where you start to get the kind of brown sugary side of the beer. So for me, at its core, it's got a little bit of an oily sort of like fudgy type flavour, and that is of course the alcohol coming out of the beer. But yeah, as you move more toward the edge of it, you start to get that little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity character to the beer as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice in this one. So yeah, nice kind of oily fudgy type character in there, and then a wee bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character towards the edge. But I think yeah, that covers the middle third of the palate in this beer. But what you'll find is that into the aftertaste you get more of the brown bready greenness and also more of the kind of Pilsner malty bite. So that's interesting when it comes to this beer. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. So a wee bit of brown bread in the base, the kind of white bread in the middle, and the more kind of Pilsner malty character on top. But the base, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you can feel there's a really nice kind of, I would say, white, you've got a really nice little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. Above that, you've got the kind of Jacob's cream cracker type quality, and then yeah, so the fresh white bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, you can feel the brown bready layers there. It's a little bit lighter, taller and more airy, drier too. Then above that you've got the white bready layer, which was a little bit lighter, drier and more airy, and a wee bit more grainy. And then yeah, at the top of that you can feel the dryness of the Pilsner malt just kind of creeping over the top of it all there, and that the Pilsner malt is really dry and bitey on that back third of the palate. And then yeah, above everything else there you start to get the yeasty side of things from this one. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me, at its core, it's a little bit more kind of brown bready, I would say, like a more kind of grainy brown bready type character. And then around its edge it's a more kind of white bready. Yeah, it's more of a sort of white bready type character that you get. So brown bread at its core, more white bready around the edge, and then yeah, you've got that kind of fluffy, you've got that more kind of Jacob's cream crackery or bread crusty edge to it there. So quite interesting in that regard. But yeah, the Pilsner malt really lingers into the aftertaste for this one. Definitely though, back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things then, let's move to the green component. Back corners of the palate you do have that nice little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of your palate you do get quite a little bit of pine resin out of this one, and it becomes more sort of floral and kind of spicy as you reach the front corners of your palate there. So that's really quite nice in this one. Round the front curve of your palate though, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy I would say. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, the green to this one is quite nice, and I would say it's quite floral and grassy and wet in the beginning, but yeah, the pine resin comes out a little bit later on and kind of lingers there. So yeah, let's look at the fruity side of things then, the front third of your palette. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palette, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and then the dry Pilsner malt on the very top of it. But the base of that front third palette, again, it's your baguette white bready bread crust, wee bit of Jacob's cream cracker, the wholemeal brown bread, the white bread, and then yeah, that more Pilsner malty character on top, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that fruity side of things then. So yeah, it's interesting because the fruit is very juicy in the beginning, but what you'll find with this beer is that it builds up a little bit of bite and a little bit of like potency. So at the back of that, front third of your palate, you've got a little bit more. You've got a wee bit more of a kind of strong grapefruity type character coming out of the beer. So yeah, a good little bit of strong grapefruity note in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of there's maybe a little touch of peach there, but yeah, that strong grapefruit kind of lingers there. But as you move further forward from that, you get lots of soft, juicy passion fruit. It gets a little bit more apricot-y as you reach the middle of the front third of your palate there, and then yeah, as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's got a bit of an almost kind of limey, melony type citrus to it. Yeah, quite a strong citrus just behind the very kind of front tip of your tongue there. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. Yeah, you got your grapefruit, your grapefruit, your passion fruit, your apricot, maybe a little bit of papaya as well, right enough, and then yeah, a more kind of gooseberry melony type note, and then a bit of stronger citrus behind the very front tip of the tongue. I think that summarises the fruity part of this beer quite well, actually. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. It's interesting, really interesting beer, this one, that has made me think a little bit about what's going on, and that's what you want after 4,200 odd beer reviews. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. Let's round off the review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, the mouthfeel on this one, it's the mouthfeel on this one for me, I'd say it's mid-bodied, it's right in the middle of the spectrum. Carbonation does have a wee bit of crispness to this one, and I think that's aided a little bit by the presence of the Pilsner malt. So yeah, fairly crisp beer, this one, but it still feels quite nice and quite clean in a sense, I would say. So yeah, I like how all of that pieces together in this one. In terms of the IBU count, I did see on Untappd that it said 10 IBUs, but I'm tempted to not believe it. It does feel a little bit more bitter than that because of the piney resinous flavour, so I wouldn't have been surprised if this one was like 40 or maybe even 50 IBUs in fact. So there's a wee bit of that going on then. The malt base, a little bit grainier underneath. You've got the smooth bready character on top of that, then there's a wee bit of a drier and kind of more oily sweetness sitting on top of that, and yeah, I think that covers the malt base quite nicely. And then the fruity character, as I said, it's got that strong grapefruity note and that more kind of limey citrus at the front tip of the tongue and things, but then yeah, you've got the softer tropical fruits kind of sitting in behind that. So overall, a really interesting beer, this one, and 2 New Zealand hops in this that are not the most common, I would say, either. I've not had Vertere in quite a long time, and Riwaka, you find it every so often, especially with the Asian breweries, but not one that you would find all that often in Europe, in honesty. So yeah, really interesting beer, this one, with a completely different take on the style compared to some others, but I have enjoyed this, and that is always the main thing. Is it a good beer? Yes, and you know, this is what you would expect from Vertere, so thumbs up to them for this. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vertere as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But yeah, this was the Acca, a New Zealand hops, New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA at 6.5% ABV from Vertere in Okutama. I've forgotten the name of this village now. That's terrible. Just out to the west of Tokyo, in the very western edge of Tokyo Prefecture. That's bad. Forgot the name of the village. Check these guys out. Check out Liquor Shop Asahiya here in Osaka, and I will see you guys in another review very, very soon. A really nice and very interesting New England hazy, this one. Ciao just now. Kanpai.